Myths have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They can be used as a roadmap to help us navigate our way through life. Myths are false on the outside, but true on the inside. Myths are lies which tell the truth. Myths are stories that have never been, but will always be. Myths are not just for putting children to sleep, but for waking adults up.
In stories that are mythically accented, they serve as an organizing principle. They order a life, whether the life is already ordered, which is great, or whether whether one's life feels like it's out of order. When these stories are taken in and reflected upon, it transforms one. It opens one up to other options, and it keeps, to go back to the myth, it keeps fixation on the self at bay, because myths expand consciousness. And the other thing I think that myths do is they open up a dialogue between consciousness and the unconscious. And for the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, that relationship in dialogue between consciousness and the unconsciousness is a real indicator of wholeness of an individual. Yeah. And for that it's invaluable. And I find it astonishing that in 12 years of public education, there is not one course in mythology allowed in. And that's part of the backwardness, because most still work with the definition of myth as something untrue. And that was inherited from the Enlightenment period of the 18th century, where science, rationality, quantification were the ways of knowing. Poetry, literature, myth, art were inaccurate and therefore to be ignored as ways of knowing. The movement is slow today, but I think it's beginning to happen, that there is a mythic consciousness growing in our country, and perhaps in Western Europe, I don't know, in which looking at things mythically puts us in a whole different frame of understanding than does explanation, quantification, and then ultimately control. So myths are ways into deepening who we are as human beings. And we continue the good fight to try to get myth into the schools, because the students, as we're seeing today with the young folks we're working with, they gravitate to it without any pushing or coercion, because story is the fundamental basis of our identity as a human being. That seems to me to be useful.
Myths have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They can be used as a roadmap to help us navigate our way through life. Myths are false on the outside, but true on the inside. Myths are lies which tell the truth. Myths are stories that have never been, but will always be. Myths are not just for putting children to sleep, but for waking adults up.